2022's Valkyrie Elysium is a weird game, but it's a good sort of weird, the kind that I eat up. It's a spin-off sequel thing set in the Valkyrie Profile series, which hasn't gotten a mainline entry since the DS. And as much as my mind immediately thinks, oh, it can't be that old, it's maybe just like 5, 6 years old, the game is 15 fucking years old, and the console itself is 19! The game was developed by Soleil, a somewhat smaller developer, and was released last year during the Year of Square, as I like to call it. It, like lots of other smaller games, was just drowned out by the sheer magnitude of what was released over the past year. And it didn't help that what little people said about it wasn't positive in the slightest. I've established at this point that I have a weird tendency to flock towards games that people have forgotten for one reason or another. But despite that, I bought Valkyrie Elysium because it actually seemed interesting, despite not having played any other games in the series. Is it good? Is it bad? You'll fucking see, just sit tight. You could probably tell from the title, but the game is solely based on Norse mythology. Its story is all about Valkyrie, a servant for Odin who travels around Midgard, going from kingdom to purify souls, prevent Ragnarok, and overall just do Odin's dirty work. Eventually, as you travel through kingdoms, you begin to find and take on Einherjar into your group. They're basically just spirits of fallen soldiers who end up fighting on your side. You also run into this guy Armand who's looking for a boyfriend-free girl. You meet Fenrir, a god who's prophesied to kill Odin in Ragnarok, and her servant Hilde, who's also a Valkyrie, which is weird. For spoiler reasons, you spend the game mostly just traveling from area to area with your team, occasionally fighting Hilde now and then, and all the major story beats are mostly kept under wraps until the final few hours of the game, which seems to be the Valkyrie series' MO. While I like the story overall, by the end of the game, the opening hour is just absolutely fucking atrocious. The first mission is a mandatory tutorial that goes on for way too fucking long, which is already annoying. But what makes it worse is that it's just the demo, which I already played in preparation for the game. I get that this is a Gigabrain David Blaine complaint. It makes sense to release a modified version of your game's opening, or hell, just the first 2 or so hours, as a demo. It's basically the norm for most games. However, when that opening is just like somebody reading a manual to you, Elysium is a very straightforward action RPG. It doesn't need a 20-minute tutorial. I'm probably nitpicking, but this shit just really got under my skin. If you can't tell, the game doesn't start off on its best foot. The narrative is paper thin. Valkyrie is a very stoic and quiet main character with little to no redeeming factors until the later half of the game, and that first mission is very hallway-esque, often pushing you into a specific manner. It got so bad that I actually almost returned it. But eventually, the worlds begin to open up, lore gets revealed, characters begin to actually do things, and you begin to obtain more weapons and moves for combat. The worlds you explore are actually quite big. It's actually really nice to roam around, explore, looking for artifacts. You'll quickly notice that each and every kingdom is destroyed and completely barren from the Asgard War, but it also just so happens to save money on not having to make NPCs. It's very obvious that Soleil probably didn't have the biggest budget, but despite that, they still managed to make a pretty solid game. It plays exactly like you'd expect an action RPG to play. There's your standard attack, heavy attack, magic through a pop-up menu, and you can summon your Einherjar during combat, each of which correspond to a different element. Naglfar all have an elemental weakness, which your Einherjar or your magic can obviously exploit, but they also have a weapon weakness. You obtain 4 different weapons throughout the game, and each different type of enemy has a specific weakness. Self-explanatory, but it was a nice addition, especially during boss fights when you run out of this game's equivalent to mana. You also have a soul chain that you can use in traversal, but you can also use it in combat in order to get close to enemies. I think more games should have a mechanic akin to this. It's a big help during boss fights as well as crowded random battles. And it kinda makes me want to play Fatal Bullet again. Difficulty wise, Elysium felt pretty easy on normal mode. I'm not trying to say that I'm the ultimate gamer man or something, but it seems like Elysium's bosses were more of a test of how fast can you dodge, and once you figure that out and spam their weakness, it's a done deal. I will say that there's just too many fucking random battles, especially since the combat, while good, can get a bit button mashy and will begin to cramp your fingers. Plus, you can't escape them. You can't back out of any random battle whatsoever. And it begins to legitimately affect level exploration because I don't want to fight through 3 waves of enemies for a chest that just has an elixir. This also affects replaying older levels since you don't really need those gems from enemies anymore, and yet, you're forced to fight them. The game has all these janky quirks, like apparently you can't cancel attacks, which makes Valkyrie feel heavy. I couldn't really put it into words until I watched some reviews and I was like, yeah, that does feel weird. I loved Dragon's Dogma thoroughly. If I loved that shit and disliked this, then there's something wrong with my brain. Good but janky games are my thing. They're my shtick, my niche. But Elysium's charming jank sometimes gets in its own way. To get the true ending in the game, you have to collect all 9 of Verdant Blossoms, which are these collectibles strewn about levels. This doesn't sound like a troublesome task, but oh, you'd be mistaken. I'm used to games requiring certain criteria for the best endings, I get it. And realistically, collecting only 9 things to get a good ending is a piece of cake compared to literally any other RPG. The real issue is the way the game handles replaying levels. If you go back to a previous mission to get them, you can't return to Valhalla mid-mission or else you'll completely lose your progress. You have to complete the entire chapter, and each of them averages out to about 45 or so minutes. You should be able to just explore locations after completing the chapters, allowing the player to roam around, find the blossoms, and do subquests instead of keeping the main missions and side quests separate. You can even let the player teleport from save point to save point. It just makes sense. The way it's executed right now added at least 3 hours to my playtime. The pseudo cell shading look initially felt kind of odd, but it eventually grew on me. And the same goes for the soundtrack by Motoi Sakuraba. He's a veteran of the industry who's been making video game music since 1989. He previously composed the rest of the Valkyrie series and the Dark Souls trilogy, but I'm more familiar with his work in the Tales franchise. Just the whole franchise. He seems to specialize in a Baroque-like sound, lots of wind instruments, violins, and operatic vocals, which works really well for a fantasy game like this. There were lots of story moments that, despite kind of falling flat, I still cared solely due to his composition. This shit is just scrumptious, you gotta listen to it for yourself. I feel like reviewing Elysium without going into spoilers or talking about the different endings does this game a massive disservice. So, spoiler warning, although I think that this game works a bit more if you know what's going on, but just fair game. After hours of Hilde and Fenrir withholding information and Odie. The villain is fucking Odie from Garfield. And Odin slowly revealing himself to be a bit of a bitch, Valkyrie, like the other protagonists in the series, figures out that she used to be human. But in her case, she was originally a woman named Nora who was in a relationship with Armand, but she was attacked and killed, then was resurrected as a Valkyrie by Odin. And, spoilers for Valkyrie profile, but this is exactly what happened to Lenneth? Like, beat for beat. I get that it's an homage for fans, but isn't there supposed to be only one Valkyrie at a time? Which of the 3 sisters is Nora right now? Which one is Hilde? Yeah, I watched the K-Bash videos. I'm down with the 411. Mama didn't raise no fool. Once you collect all 9 of the Verdant Blossoms, the truth is revealed. Basically, the gods got greedy and began to eat souls for power. What the fuck? Ruining the cycle of life and death, killing the world tree Yggdrasil, which is the beginning of Ragnarok. And in the prophecy, Odin is slain by Fenrir. So he locked her up despite the fact that she was innocent at the time, which made her go absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Take that as a lesson, kids. Not all your jokes will land, but you better say it like you fucking mean it. Say it with your chest. I'm a sucker for weird blood feuds and prophecies, and just generally weird lore. So this really just grabbed my attention by the balls. Plus, Fenrir's VA is just putting in the hard work. There's only 4 endings that you can get in the game. The standard ending is where you completely ignore the Blossoms and Armand's request to live together with him, then you just end up murdering both Fenrir and Hilde. Odin recreates the world, effectively killing everyone except for Nora. The 2 bad endings are Nora running off with Armand to be human, which is just kind of weak. That's stupid! And the other one is just absolutely throwing shit at the wall because you apparently fight Fenrir, Hilde, each of your Einherjar, and Odin. Due to circumstance and just pure exhaustion of replaying the ending, this was just the only one I didn't end up getting around to, and thank God, because that sounds like a lot. The true ending of the game consists of still turning down Armand because he will never get a boyfriend-free girl, and teaming up with Hilde to kill both Fenrir and Odin. But since the world still needs a full god, and the Valkyrie are demigods, they do some Dragon Ball Z fusion shit, combining their powers, and are then able to give the souls back to Yggdrasil, ending Ragnarok. Then Valkyrie goes off to Armand to live a happy life. I must say, as goofy as it sounds on paper, it's a pretty satisfying conclusion. I don't know what it is, man. Maybe I'm tricking myself into liking it because I've been so disappointed recently. But there's some sort of charm to this game that eventually grew on me. Maybe it's because I got it for $30, maybe it's because I have a soft spot for janky JRPGs with lots of promise. I don't know. It's a spin-off to an already small series of games that hasn't gotten a release since 2008, and instead of a full sequel, Elysium is an action-focused spin-off with little added lore to the franchise. I can understand the disappointment, since Profile is seen as one of the best games on the PlayStation 1, and all I hear about Silmaria and Covenant is constant praise. No matter which way you cut it, this is just not what fans were expecting whatsoever, and I don't think that the $70 price point helped either. I bought Elysium for $30, and that's a perfect price point. Honestly, anything else is just too much. It feels like people judge this solely off of preconceived notions. Whether it's what they think of Modern Square, believe me, we all have our opinions, or the fact that this game just isn't the sequel that fans wanted. Despite my criticisms, I did still have fun. Maybe I'm tricking myself, but when I played Elysium, I was able to completely immerse myself into the experience, quirks and all, and I ended up having a lot more fun than I expected to. After playing Elysium, I'm extremely excited for Soleil's upcoming release, Wanted Dead, which comes out in February, and I'm kind of interested in looking into the other games in the series. And overall, that's pretty much what a good sequel is meant to do. I hope you all enjoyed that video. It is hot as fuck in this fucky ass room I'm in. Sorry it took so long to make a new video. I wrote this video not too long after Christmas, but then I started working on a gigantic PlayStation 3 video that is at least 2,400 words right now, and I'm not even done talking about all the games. So yeah, that's gonna be a big project. And I gotta play Final Fantasy games and other video ideas, and yeah, this year is gonna be loaded. Let's just say that. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, and all that jazz. I'll catch you guys next time. Later, kids. Have a good night.
Motherfucker, I'm ill. A millionaire, I'm a young money millionaire, tougher than Nigerian hair. My criteria compared to your career just isn't fair. I'm a venereal disease, like a menstrual bleed.